Clinton Ward's voice sliced through the conference room like a blade. Your contract is terminated effective immediately. He tossed a stapled packet onto the glass table, and it landed with a slap that made everyone flinch except him. 7 executives sat in a half-circle behind him, their faces blank, watching me like I was a bug under glass. My throat tightened. I stood there frozen, my hands gripping the back of the chair I'd been invited to sit in but never got the chance to use. Clinton's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Security will escort you out, he added, loud enough for everyone to hear. The floor tilted beneath me. My face burned hot then cold. I couldn't breathe right. Every eye in that room was on me, and not one person looked surprised. They'd known. They'd all known this was coming. My fingers trembled as I tried to process what was happening. 17 months of late nights. 17 months of carrying projects no one else wanted. And this was how it ended. In front of an audience. With Clinton looking at me like I was nothing. My legs felt like they might give out. The security guard appeared in the doorway. His radio crackling softly. My mouth went dry. I wanted to say something, anything, but my voice was stuck somewhere deep in my chest. Clinton leaned forward, his elbows on the table. His eyes locked on mine. Next time, he said quietly, try being more useful. The words hit me like a punch. Something inside me cracked wide open. My vision blurred at the edges, and I blinked hard, refusing to let tears fall in front of these people. Not here. Not now. I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. But my hands were shaking so badly I had to shove them into my pockets. The security guard stepped closer. His expression apologetic but firm. I forced my feet to move one step, then another. As I turned toward the door, my eyes caught something on the packet Clinton had thrown. The final page was facing up. And there, in bold print, were the words I'd fought for during contract negotiations. Termination without cause. My brain suddenly snapped into focus. The fog of humiliation lifted just enough for me to see clearly. That clause. The one Clinton had barely glanced at when I'd insisted on adding it. The one his lawyer had waved off as standard protective language. Guaranteed compensation including accelerated equity value in the event of termination without documented cause. My heart was still pounding, but now it wasn't just from shock. It was from something else. Something sharper. Clinton had no idea what he'd just triggered. He'd been so eager to get rid of me, so confident in his power, that he hadn't even checked the fine print. Or maybe he had and he just didn't care. Either way, he'd made a mistake. A massive one. I straightened my shoulders as the security guard waited by the door. My hands stopped shaking. The humiliation was still there, burning in my chest, but underneath it was something cold and clear. He just made a $4 million mistake. And I was going to make sure he knew it. If you're watching this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my revenge story from. I want to know how far it has traveled. My name is Aaron Caldwell, and 5 minutes ago, my CEO tried to erase me in front of an audience. I'm 38 years old. A project director who spent the last year and a half rebuilding the operational structure of a company that was hemorrhaging money when I arrived. I fixed broken systems. I turned failing initiatives into revenue generators. I trained people who didn't know what they were doing. And I did it quietly, professionally, without asking for credit or recognition, because I thought the work would speak for itself. I was wrong. As I stood there in that conference room, staring at the termination packet on the table, everything came rushing back. Every late night. Every stolen idea. Every time Clinton gave my work to someone else and pretended I didn't exist. Every warning sign I'd ignored because I wanted to believe I was valued. The security guard cleared his throat gently. I turned the contract page over, and the full clause stared back at me. Every word I'd negotiated. Every protection I'd built in. It was all still there. And Clinton had just activated every single one. 6 months earlier, I'd watched Clinton Ward stand at the front of the room during our Monday strategy meeting, praising Leo Harmon for work I'd stayed up all weekend completing. Leo sat 2 seats away from me, his arms crossed, nodding along like he'd actually done something. Clinton didn't even glance in my direction. "This is exactly the kind of forward-thinking leadership we need," Clinton said, gesturing to the presentation slides I'd designed. Leo smiled. That smile made my stomach turn. After the meeting ended, Leo passed by my desk and leaned in close enough that only I could hear. "Thanks for the assist," he whispered. Like I was his assistant. Like I'd volunteered to do his work. I opened my mouth to respond, but he was already walking away, his hands in his pockets, whistling. That was the first time I realized something was deeply wrong. Not just wrong with Leo, but wrong with Clinton. Wrong with the way this company operated. I'd been hired to fix systems, but no one had told me the biggest problem was the person at the top. 3 weeks after that meeting, Clinton called me out in front of the entire team during our Monday roundup. "Erin," he said, his tone sharp, "your leadership on the Morrison initiative has been concerning. We're seeing delays and communication breakdowns that are affecting the entire timeline." I blinked, stunned. The Morrison initiative was ahead of schedule. I had the reports to prove it. But before I could respond, Clinton moved on to the next agenda item, cutting me off completely. After the meeting, I tried to approach him, but he waved me away. "We'll discuss it later," he said without looking at me. I went back to my desk, my face hot, my hands clenched into fists. 2 hours later, Patricia from HR appeared at my cubicle. She sat down carefully, her smile tight. "Erin," she said quietly, "I just wanted to check in. Clinton mentioned you've been struggling with feedback. Maybe it would help if you tried to be more agreeable in meetings." Agreeable. The word sat in my chest like a stone. I nodded slowly, not trusting myself to speak. Patricia patted my shoulder and left. That night I started documenting everything. I created a folder on my personal laptop labeled Work Record. Inside I saved every email, every project timeline, every message thread that showed what I'd actually done versus what Clinton claimed I'd done. I started taking screenshots of my task lists. I recorded the dates and times of meetings. I wrote down conversations word for word as soon as they happened, while the details were still fresh. I wasn't planning revenge. Not yet. I was just trying to protect myself. Trying to create a record in case things got worse. And they did get worse. One afternoon, I was walking past Clinton's office when I heard his voice through the partially open door. "I want her gone by spring," he said. Froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. I couldn't see who he was talking to, but I didn't need to. I knew exactly who he meant. I kept walking, my legs shaky, my mind racing. Spring was 3 months away. That gave me 3 months to figure out what to do. 3 months to prepare. 3 months to survive. 2 weeks later, Clinton assigned me a project that required coordination with 3 different departments and at least a week of work. "I need this done by Thursday," he said. It was Tuesday afternoon. I stared at him, waiting for the joke. But he wasn't joking. "That's 48 hours, I said carefully. "For a cross-departmental analysis and a full strategy presentation." Clinton shrugged. "If you can't handle it, I can assign it to someone else." Someone else meant Leo. I knew that. Everyone knew that. So I said yes. I stayed at the office until midnight on Tuesday. I came in at 6 on Wednesday morning. I sent emails at 2 in the morning, coordinating with department heads who were just as overwhelmed as I was. By Thursday at noon I had the presentation ready. It was good. Maybe the best work I'd ever done under pressure. I sent it to Clinton with a quiet sense of pride. Thursday afternoon, Leo presented my work to the executive team. He stood at the front of the room with my slides, my data, my strategy, and took credit for all of it. Clinton clapped him on the back afterward. I sat in the back of the room, invisible. That night, I sat in my car in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight like something was crushing me from the inside. I whispered to myself, trying to stay calm. I can't keep doing this. But I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to leave. I'd built my entire career on being dependable, on delivering results, on proving my worth through work. And none of it mattered. My phone buzzed. I glanced down and saw an email from Clinton. The timestamp read 11:49 at night. The subject line was blank. The message was 2 sentences. We need to talk. My office. Monday morning. I stared at the screen, my heart sinking. Monday was 4 days away. 4 days to wonder what he wanted. 4 days to prepare for whatever was coming. I set my phone down and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. I didn't cry. I was too tired to cry. I just sat there in the dark, alone, and let the weight of it all press down on me. 17 months earlier, before any of this started, I'd sat across from Clinton during my final contract negotiation. I'd been burned at my last job when they let me go without warning and without compensation. So this time I came prepared. I need protective language, I told him. If I'm terminated without documented cause, I want guaranteed compensation and accelerated equity. Clinton barely looked at the contract. He waved his hand dismissively. Sure. Whatever you need. We're not planning to let anyone go. His lawyer, a tired-looking woman named Maureen, glanced at me over her glasses. These clauses are standard in executive contracts, she said. If the company terminates without cause, you're protected. Clinton signed the papers without reading them. He wanted me to start immediately. He was desperate for someone who could fix the operational mess his company was drowning in. I signed too, relieved that I'd protected myself. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Victoria, called me that night. If they ever terminate you without cause, she said, you win. Just make sure you keep records. Promised I would. I had no idea how important that promise would become. 2 months before my termination, Leo cornered me by the elevators. He was holding a coffee, his expression casual, but his eyes were cold. Aaron, he said, stepping closer, Clinton thinks you're not really a culture fit anymore. He's been talking to some of us about it. Maybe it's time for you to consider your options. I stared at him, my throat tight. My options? Leo shrugged. You know, moving on. Finding something that's a better match for your skills. He paused, then added quietly. The new director position needs room to grow. And right now you're kind of in the way. New director. He meant himself. He wanted my job and Clinton was going to give it to him. I stepped into the elevator without responding. As the doors closed, Leo smiled at me. That same smug, knowing smile. I leaned against the elevator wall and closed my eyes. My hands were shaking again. But this time it wasn't fear. It was anger. That night, I sat at my desk at home, staring at a framed photo of my mother. She'd passed away 3 years earlier, and I still missed her every single day. She used to tell me, never let small men shrink your worth. I could hear her voice so clearly, like she was sitting right next to me. I opened my laptop and started searching. I'd heard rumors that the company was being acquired. Whispers in the break room. Coded language in executive emails. If that was true, it changed everything. I found an article in a business journal dated 2 weeks earlier. The headline read, Major acquisition talks confirmed for mid-sized tech firms. Our company was listed. The deal was expected to close in 3 months. 3 months. That was exactly when Clinton wanted me gone. And if the acquisition went through, my equity would triple in value. My termination clause included accelerated equity. If Clinton fired me without cause before the acquisition closed, I wouldn't just get severance. I'd get the full value of my equity as if the deal had already happened. I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. Clinton had no idea what he was walking into. The next morning, I replied to Clinton's email from 3 days earlier. I kept my tone professional and calm. I wrote that I was happy to meet Monday morning to discuss any concerns he had about my performance. I attached a detailed summary of every project I'd completed in the last 6 months, including timelines, results, and feedback from department heads. Every single one of them praised my work. I hit send and waited. Clinton replied 2 hours later. 1 sentence. We'll discuss this in person. No acknowledgement of the data I'd sent. No response to the evidence. Just a dismissal. I knew what that meant. He wasn't interested in facts. He'd already made his decision. I spent the rest of the week preparing. I printed copies of every email. I organized my documentation into clear, labeled folders. I reviewed my contract clause by clause, making notes on what it meant and what it covered. By Sunday night I was ready. Whatever Clinton was planning, I'd be ready for it. Monday morning I walked into Clinton's office at exactly 9. He was sitting behind his desk, his expression cold. Patricia from HR was there too, sitting in the corner with a folder in her lap. I sat down across from Clinton and folded my hands in my lap. "Aaron," Clinton began, "we've noticed some performance issues over the last few months. Your leadership hasn't been meeting our expectations." I opened my mouth to respond, but he held up a hand. "I'm placing you on a formal performance improvement plan. You'll have 30 days to show measurable improvement, or we'll need to reevaluate your position here." Patricia slid a document across the desk. I picked it up and scanned it quickly. Every single concern listed was either fabricated or taken wildly out of context. I looked up at Clinton. "This isn't accurate," I said calmly. "I can provide documentation that contradicts every point on this list." Clinton smiled thinly. "That won't be necessary. This is just a formality. If you improve, there's nothing to worry about." I didn't sign it. I took the document with me and left. That afternoon, I sent a detailed email to HR, attaching evidence that disproved every claim on the performance plan. Clinton replied an hour later. One sentence. "We'll discuss this in person soon." What I didn't know at the time was that the company's legal team had advised Clinton to follow the performance improvement plan properly before taking any further action. They'd told him that terminating me without cause would trigger significant financial liability, especially with the acquisition pending. Clinton ignored them. He called the legal team into his office and told them he didn't need their permission to make personnel decisions. "I run this company," he said. "Not you." Maureen, the same lawyer who'd reviewed my contract, tried to explain the risks. Clinton cut her off. "I'll handle it," he said. He scheduled another meeting with me for the following Monday. Termination day. But he didn't tell me that. He didn't warn me. He just let me keep working, keep trying, keep hoping that maybe things would get better. They didn't. And when Monday came, he walked me into that conference room, threw the termination packet on the table, and ended my career in front of an audience. He thought that would be the end of it. He was wrong. Security escorted me through the office. People I'd worked with for over a year avoided eye contact. Some turned back to their computers. Others pretended to be on phone calls. No one said goodbye. No one asked if I was okay. I carried a small cardboard box with my desk belongings. Photo frame. Coffee mug. Notebook. That was all I had to show for 17 months. When I reached my car, I set the box in the passenger seat and sat behind the wheel. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was clear. Clearer than it had been in months. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. I drafted a message to HR, requesting copies of all termination documents, calculations of my severance and equity, and a full record of my performance reviews. I kept the tone calm, professional, and firm. I hit send. Then I whispered to myself, just loud enough to hear, "Checkmate." I started the car and drove home. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time I knew exactly what I was doing. 2 days after my termination, Patricia from HR sent me a carefully worded email. She wanted to schedule a meeting to clarify the terms of my departure. I replied immediately, agreeing to meet but requesting that all documents be provided in advance. She hesitated. I could tell from the tone of her follow-up message that something had shifted. She was nervous, but the meeting was set for Friday afternoon. I spent the next 3 days preparing. I reviewed my contract again. I organized my documentation. I contacted Victoria, my lawyer, and walked her through everything that had happened. She listened carefully, taking notes. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "They're going to panic when they realize what they've done. Don't engage emotionally. Just stick to the facts." Promised I would. Friday afternoon I walked into the HR conference room. Patricia was there along with Maureen from legal. Both of them looked uncomfortable. I sat down and waited. Patricia cleared her throat. "We wanted to clarify the terms of your severance package and discuss next steps." He nodded. "I'd like to start by confirming that my termination was without documented cause." Maureen's expression tightened. "That's correct." Smiled. "Good. Then we're all on the same page." That same afternoon something unexpected happened. I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Acquisition due diligence." I opened it carefully. The sender identified himself as Marcus Brennan, a third-party auditor working on behalf of the company acquiring Clinton's firm. His message was brief and professional. He explained that my termination had been flagged during their financial review as a potential liability. He asked if I'd be willing to provide a copy of my contract and any related documentation. I stared at the email for a long time. This was it. This was the moment everything shifted. I forwarded the message to Victoria. She called me 10 minutes later. "This is huge," she said. "They're trying to assess the financial impact of your termination before the deal closes. If your payout is large enough, it could affect the acquisition terms." I asked her what I should do. "Send them everything," she said. "Your contract, your documentation, your timeline. Be cooperative and professional. Let them see exactly what Clinton did." I replied to Marcus within the hour, attaching my full contract and a summary of my termination. I kept my tone neutral and factual. No emotion, just information. Marcus responded immediately. "Thank you. We'll be in touch soon." Over the next week, Clinton's behavior became increasingly erratic. According to people still working at the company, he stormed out of his office multiple times, slamming doors and yelling at HR. The acquisition team was asking questions he couldn't answer. Staff members whispered in hallways. Rumors spread quickly. Leo, who'd been so confident just weeks earlier, suddenly looked nervous. He stopped taking credit for things. He kept his head down. One afternoon, I received an email from the company's board legal counsel. Her name was Andrea Fallon, and her message was polite but formal. She requested a meeting to discuss my termination and the ongoing acquisition process. I forwarded the email to Victoria, who advised me to agree but insist that she be present. I replied, confirming that I'd meet with Andrea as long as my attorney could attend. Andrea agreed immediately. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. The walls were closing in on Clinton, and he was starting to realize it. The audit results came back faster than anyone expected. Marcus Brennan sent a formal report to the acquisition team, the board, and the company's legal department. I wasn't copied on it, but Victoria received a summary from Andrea. The findings were clear. My termination clause, combined with the accelerated equity tied to the pending acquisition, created a financial liability of $4 million. That amount was due at closing, and the acquisition could not proceed until the liability was resolved. $4 million. The number sat in my chest like a weight. I hadn't fully understood how much my clause was worth until that moment. The acquisition team called an emergency meeting with the board. Clinton was not invited. According to sources inside the company, the board reviewed Marcus's report and concluded that Clinton had acted with personal bias, violated company protocol, and knowingly sabotaged the acquisition timeline. They placed him on immediate administrative leave pending a leadership review. When I heard the news, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of proving myself. Tired of watching powerful people destroy things because they couldn't control their egos. But I also felt something else. Relief. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't the one in trouble. Clinton was. The board moved quickly. Within 2 weeks, they concluded their review and issued a formal decision. Clinton Ward was removed as CEO, effective immediately. The decision was based on multiple factors, but the primary reason was his mishandling of my termination and the financial impact it had on the acquisition. Leo Harmon, who'd been so eager to take my position, was reassigned to a lower-level role in a different department. Several other executives who'd sat silently in that conference room while Clinton humiliated me were quietly let go. The company issued a press release announcing a leadership transition. Clinton's name was mentioned once, buried in the second paragraph. News spread quickly through the office. People I'd worked with for over a year suddenly remembered my name. Some reached out with apologies. Others sent messages saying they'd always known Clinton was wrong. I didn't respond to most of them. Their silence when it mattered had been loud enough. One person did reach out who surprised me. Patricia from HR sent a personal email, apologizing for not standing up for me when she should have. She admitted she'd been scared of losing her own job. I appreciated her honesty. I replied, thanking her and wishing her well. That was all I could offer. 3 weeks after the board's decision, I received a formal letter from Andrea Fallon. The board had approved my full payout under the termination clause. The amount was exactly as calculated. $4 million, including accelerated equity value, severance, and additional compensation for the procedural violations that had occurred during my termination. The letter also included a written apology from the board, acknowledging that I had been subjected to unfair treatment and that the company deeply regretted the way my departure had been handled. I sat at my kitchen table, reading the letter 3 times, making sure I understood every word. $4 million. It didn't erase what had happened. It didn't undo the humiliation or the sleepless nights or the months of feeling worthless. But it was acknowledgement. It was validation. It was proof that I'd been right all along. Andrea's letter ended with an invitation. The board wanted to meet with me in person to finalize the settlement. I wasn't required to attend, but they hoped I would. I called Victoria and asked what she thought. Go, she said. Let them see your face. Let them remember what they did. I agreed. The meeting was scheduled for the following Monday. Monday morning, I walked into the same building I'd been escorted out of weeks earlier. This time no one stopped me. No one asked for my ID. The receptionist smiled nervously and directed me to the executive conference room. Andrea was waiting, along with 2 board members I recognized but had never spoken to. Clinton was not there. I sat down at the table, and Andrea slid a settlement agreement across to me. I reviewed it carefully, taking my time. Every term matched what we'd negotiated. Every number was correct. I signed the document with a pen Andrea provided. No one spoke while I signed. When I finished, Andrea handed me a copy. On behalf of the board, she said quietly, I want to apologize for what happened to you. It was wrong, and it never should have occurred. I nodded, accepting her words but not offering forgiveness. That wasn't something I was ready to give. As I stood to leave, one of the board members spoke. We've learned a great deal from this situation, he said. We're implementing new policies to ensure it never happens again. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, I hope you mean that. I walked out of the building for the second time. This time I wasn't carrying a cardboard box. I was carrying a settlement check and my dignity, both intact. Clinton Ward left the company quietly. There was no public announcement, no farewell party, no acknowledgement of his years of service. He simply disappeared. I heard through industry contacts that he'd taken a position at a smaller firm, far from the spotlight he'd once craved. His reputation had been damaged. People knew what he'd done. And in our industry, reputation mattered. Leo Harmon stayed at the company for another 6 months before resigning. No one was surprised. He'd been exposed as someone who took credit for other people's work, and once that became clear, his career stalled. The acquisition closed 3 months after my settlement. The company moved forward under new leadership. From what I heard, morale improved significantly. People felt safer, more valued. I didn't follow the news closely. I moved on. 2 weeks after the settlement, I received a call from the CEO of a competing firm. Her name was Bethany Cross, and she'd heard about what happened. She offered me a position as senior project director, with full autonomy, a generous salary, and a team that respected expertise over politics. I accepted immediately. My new job started a month later. And for the first time in years I felt like I could breathe. 6 months after everything ended, I sat in my new office, looking out at the city below. The sun was streaming through the windows, bright and warm. My team was in the conference room down the hall, working on a project we'd designed together. No one was taking credit for anyone else's work. No one was undermining me. No one was trying to push me out. I thought about Clinton sometimes. Not with anger, but with something closer to pity. He'd destroyed his own career because he couldn't handle someone else's success. He'd let his ego cost him everything. I didn't destroy him. His arrogance did that. All I did was understand my worth and protect it. I picked up my phone and opened a message from Victoria. She'd sent me an article about contract negotiations and why protective clauses mattered. The headline read, "Know your rights before you sign." I smiled and set the phone down. My mother's voice echoed in my mind, clear as ever. Never let small men shrink your worth. I hadn't. And I never would again. I turned back to my computer and got to work. 'Cause that's what I do. I build things. I solve problems. And I do it on my own terms. Always. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done if you found yourself in such situation? Please share below and subscribe to this channel for more stories like mine.